Yo, what's good, basketball heads? It's your boy Crush. Kevin Garnett, he responded to Anthony Edwards, constantly disrespecting all the older players. You know, Anthony Edwards is always talking crazy. So Kevin Garnett said he don't believe anybody in this generation could have played 20 years ago. You know, and he was breaking it down why, how the game is different. And he said all that, step back threes like James Harden. The game evolved. Most of the players now do step back threes and all this other stuff. He's saying back in his era, all the step back threes and all this extra new moves, it would have been ineffective. And this is after Anthony Edwards, he was talking, crazy. And Anthony Edwards, he's one of my favorite players. He's one of my favorites, but he's always being disrespectful. This guy has no respect for anything before him. If it's not current, then he's just disrespectful. And, he's always talking crazy. And Kevin Garnett, he had enough. The same way Magic Johnson said Anthony Edwards should be quiet, because he haven't won anything, which I do agree. And if you hear all the players today talk, they all believe they're the best thing. Everybody in this generation feels like their game is the best. Back in the days, the players weren't so good. Their game is dated. Just nonsense. You have a few players that has respect for the game. But majority, they're very disrespectful. They're always talking crazy. And Ant-Man, he talks a bit too much. Like, you got to know when to be quiet. He's always talking. Recently, Anthony Edwards said no players outside of Michael Jordan had any skills. And that sounds crazy for you to even be that disrespectful. That don't even add up. No player beside Michael Jordan is skillful. That sounds crazy. And his comment brought out people like Isaiah Thomas, Magic Johnson, clearly Kevin Garnett, and others. Everybody pushed back because Anthony Edwards, he's talking out of his face. So this is what Kevin Garnett had to say. If I'm being honest, I don't think anybody in this generation could have played 20 years ago. If I'm being 100, this is the Ant. This is the Tatum. Let me tell y'all something. 20 years ago, you couldn't have gotten to a triple step back. It's not happening. If you shot that ish, it had to go on because we had efficiency back in the day. It was so effing hard. It was too physical. The league had to come off it for the floor movement to be able to have scoring go up. But let's not talk about gamesmanship and physicality of the game back then, because I don't think most of these kids would have been in the NBA locker room 20 years ago. The locker rooms were too grown, and it was a different era. You have to respect your predecessors. In any sports, you have to respect the ones that paved the way for you to play the game today. And Ant-Man is very disrespectful. I don't think he respects anybody. So what you have is the physicality 20, 30 years ago versus the skills today. Not saying players back then didn't have skills, obviously. But that's the argument. It's normally, the modern player is more skillful, but back in the day, it was more physical. And these are two of the most basic talking points in most debates. It's always the skills versus the physicality. The old versus the new. Anthony Edwards, he's my favorite player of this generation. I love his game and I love his attitude, but he has to learn to be more respectful. You got to learn to be respectful of your elders. They paved the way for you to do what you're doing now. I mean, some things got to add up. It has to make sense. So players today, they're more skillful, yet everybody keeps creating super teams, teaming up. No one wants to get it out the mud. Everybody keeps on, creating these super teams, stacking the deck. No one wants to compete, but then they'll tell you that today they're more skillful. I'm not going to argue that point per se, but if they have more skills today, if they are better, why do everyone keeps joining forces? No one wants to get it on their own. Let's all team up, bypass the grind, going through the mud, the things you got to do to be a better player, to grow mentally, physically, grow your game. Let's bypass that entire situation in the pursuit of easy rings, basically. And you always hear these players constantly disrespecting all the older players from the 90s to the 80s to the 70s. Anything pre 2K, they're not good. So you'll hear people like Gilbert Arenas, who came in 2001. So this is his era. Even though he's been retired a few years now, it's been a while. This is still his era. So you'll hear him, try to elevate LeBron, disrespect Michael Jordan, disrespect all the older players before him. The same thing Anthony Edwards is doing. And all these young players, they continue to do this nonsense. Instead of acknowledging, the players that came first, who helped build the league, obviously. Your game is modeled after someone. You don't just develop your game out of space. It took for Bill Russell, Dr. J, Magic, Bird, Michael Jordan, etc. It took for them for us to get to where we are now. So you can't frown upon them and look down on your predecessors and constantly try to, shit on them. That don't make any sense. And say things like Michael Jordan was the only player who had skills. That is so ignorant and dumb. And that's my main gripe with Anthony Edwards beyond anything. Love his game, love his attitude, but his mindset is immature and it's stupid. Like, why would you feel like one player is the only player in an entire league that has skills? That doesn't make any sense. There are different forms of skills, rebounds, blocking, defense. You have different type of skills. So you can't say one player because he was so explosive, dynamic, he's the only player that had skills. That's just irresponsible and stupid. But, me personally, I respect all game. The yesteryears, the right now, it doesn't matter. It's sports. I respect everybody's game. But it's unfortunate, but it's always like this. The younger, newer players, when they come in, they frown upon everything before them. Oh, that was trash. That wasn't good. So how did you get to this point? Somebody had to start. Everything begins somewhere, obviously. But Anthony Edwards, man, I hope he grows mentally, get out of that immature mindset. Because as much as I enjoy his game, whenever he opens his mouth, it's always some dumb nonsense that comes out of his mouth. Love his game, but his mindset is just, so you got Magic Johnson, Isaiah, and everybody trying to check this kid just for talking dumb. But as always, I holla. As always, we just talking basketball. Hit the subscribe button, like, comment, share, holla at your boy.
It's all about the game and how you play it. It's all about the game. I'ma say it. It's all about the game.